with you in Zoom land. We are gathered again today to dive deep into understanding AI and the many intersections with sustainable development, but just with living on islands, living in the Bahamas, living on this planet, and learning from brilliant minds. So I would like to introduce Abby Shamelis Goshu, who is our key facilitator here during tonight's session. Abby, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Nikita. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are, everyone. Glad to be here again on the AI Green Lab, organized by the Young Marine Explorers and in collaboration with the UNESCO National Commission um, for the Bahamas. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Nikita, for and the team for organizing this beautiful event. It's been now 2 weeks. This is our second session. Glad to see also Dagam join us. Anthony's, Gimel, Donovan, and people joining in still. So it's nice to see you all again. Yeah, what a week. Yeah, let's start by first, catching up what's happening in the week, Nikita. What's happening in your world? What's happening in Barbados? Before we dive too quick into the AI's
Oh,
agenda.
thank you. All right, so this was such a fun share. Last week I was in Lamu, Kenya, and we were deep in Swahili soul culture, art, science, learning, really focusing on just co-creating climate solutions in community. And this week I am joining you from Bridgetown, Barbados. The incredible island in the sun, where we have young people from throughout the Caribbean convening, diving deep into different thematics around climate solutions, understanding the core issues, listening to experts, coming up with plans. And it really has been an amazing experience to just be part of the co-creation of, and then also just seeing it unfold. And there's powerful conversations taking place on the ground, and seeing where those intersections are with AI. I'm excited to explore today. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So I think different students and young climate champions are gathered, right, from different parts of the Caribbean on these 3 days
Yeah, 4 days.
until Friday.
Yeah,
Four
we
days.
got
Okay.
the full pack session. And what's wonderful, and we invite everyone, we have an online community called, it's hosted in Circle, and it's free to sign up, and there you can watch all of the sessions. They've all been recorded. There's live discussion boards. This is a living community that we are building over the next few ever as we are putting together action plans and building out our budgets. We had an excellent session yesterday, on finance and climate finance. And today's conversation really revolved around entrepreneurship. And how do we, like, what does disaster risk response or management or reduction even look like? How are we going to fund our ability to adapt to the climate crisis? And that really looks like, um, developing new industry and new sort of cash flows for young people throughout the region. So this is what we've been exploring this week or today. And yeah, so I'm actually really excited to see where these intersections are, because of course AI presents such opportunity for just revolution in so many different ways. And so seeing how we can apply that and just help young people get access to the technology so that they can be more involved in these conversations that we're having, like this one here in today's session.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So we have new new guests from on today's session. Just for the a brief recap from first from session one, for the sake of our new guests. Last week we had an interesting presentation, just an introductory foundational presentations on artificial intelligence, what machine learning, I mean, basically what intelligence is, learning, and very interesting presentation by Dagam, which of course we're going to hear from him, his recap as well. So we did some introductory assessments of what people understand by data, what's intelligence means, what is artificial intelligence, what's human intelligence, and those kind of basic understandings at a very basic definition level. And we also had um, a brief kind of overview of why AI and green and what this whole idea of co-creation lab, experiential lab, if you call it virtual lab, is all about, and what do we really mean in using emerging technologies for solving some of our social challenges, environmental challenges, and how we can basically use and leverage technology for social good. So that's the name, AI for good and AI for green, the blue and the good. So having said that, I'll just quickly share you my screen, just to yeah, just a sec. Okay, can you see?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. So my name is Abish Mellis. I'm currently working as the campaign lead for the Action for Peace 2030 campaign, and currently also working as a project communications lead at the Economic Commission for Africa on digital ID, trade, and economy. And last time, on our last session, we were talking about the two frontiers, like the urgent actions that are globally human beings are faced with, having to feed and provide living conditions for 9.7 billion people by 2050 while staying within safe ecological limits. And we've also noted that even from the words of the UN and all different multilateral organizations, governments, institutions, the scientific community, that we're uh, we're dealing with the environmental issues as well as also dealing with new emerging technologies such as AI, which is also the subject of this webinar series, and how we can basically deal with these two frontiers. The UN Secretary General also was referring to these two dynamics, saying, looking to the future, two seismic shifts will shape the 21st century. One is the climate crisis, and the other is the digital transformation. So today, for the sake of just giving you a brief overview of what to expect on today's second session, is sub-themed AI and social impact. We're gonna have a quick recap from Dagam, who will introduce himself after this outline. He is a very good friend, colleague. He's a game thinker, and also an innovator, software engineer, and also CEO and founder for Efuye Galai, who's going to explain more about his company and what he does. I know that he uses game thinking to provide solutions, to design thinking, to design ideas. So he's going to tell us more about that. We're going to have a quick recap on what his presentation was about last week, and then continue from there. And then we're going to touch on a few points on what we mean by social impact of AI, the social impact of AI for the green, the blue, and the good. We're going to touch a bit about access to meaningful connectivity before we talk about AI, of course we need to talk about connectivity and what are some of the barriers, and we're going to touch on, of course, data, which is also a core subject of this webinar series, and what do we mean by data as a public common good. And AI applications, we're going to also hear from some of the inputs you've gave us through your application and how you imagine using AI in your daily life. So we're going to hear from you as well. This is not going to be a strict lecture, so stay tuned. We're going to hear more from you as well. And we're going to have a bit of Q&A at the end of the session. So with that said, I'll hand over the floor to Dagam to continue his presentation from where he picked last time, and also introduce himself and also others as well who joined us today for the first time. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, from wherever you are. Doug Moywetul is my name, and a close friend to Abby, and I'm very honored. And this is the second time coming to you with a kind of conversation with regards to on the topic of like AI and what AI can do for us. Like I said, it's a great pleasure to kind of. It's always nice when good people come, and it seems it's just a matter of time until they do. And I'm really delighted to be here as well. And hi, Nikita and Avi and everyone else who attended the session last time. And I believe like there are also like new people here as well. Before I start, like I continue where we left off from last week, just to give you a brief understanding of who I am. You might be wondering who this guy talking. So I'm born and raised here in Addis, Ethiopia. My background is in electrical engineering, specializing in software engineering, and I've kind of, even though I look young, I've actually I've lived enough to mass some amount of experience on different fields. So I've specialized in software engineering, then moving into the field of game thinking, where we explore systems and how systems work. So the systems can be like human built systems or human to machine systems. And yes, most people might be familiar with actual games like that you play on a daily basis for entertainment, but games transcend the ordinary fun time, and they are actually like how nations communicate with one another, or how we communicate with machines, and how we address sophisticated topics like agriculture, peace. These are like huge systems coming together with a lot of people. So we call it game theory, and that's one of the specializations I'm currently doing now. And with regard to this specialization, a lot is going on with the field of like leveraging technology uh, in the field, because we're always working with a mass amount of data. And it's my honor to come and share my experience on some of the topics. And yeah, um, we can start off like where we left off, or should we do a round of introduction?
Yeah, that would be excellent. Thank you, Dagam, for that introduction. So let's hear from the audience as well. The Antonis, should we start from you?
Good
Can you
evening,
quickly
everybody.
introduce yourself? Yeah, awesome.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony. I live in Cat Island, the Bahamas. I'm also a part of a YME organization as a trainee and the community marine biology. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here with you guys tonight to learn all about this AI. I see it's picking up very fast. Every time you scroll on social media, it's AI, AI, AI. So I am so excited to be here and to just take in all of this knowledge and stuff you guys have to dish out tonight. And also, I'm a mom of my son. I cannot forget that, the Ocean King. I wish he could be here, but he ran off somewhere. So I'll just have to tell him everything I learned. But yeah, thank you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anthony. Um, who do we have? Donovan?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes. My name is Donovan Paul. I'm the CEO of Lifeline IT Group of Companies. We are a security integration company in the Bahamas, Nassau, the capital. We focus on AI, more of not the, I would say, decentralized AI surveillance platforms, but we also do a lot of decentralized networks that's not cloud-based. And I am extremely interested and eager to learn more of what you guys do.
Excellent. Thank you, Donovan. There's a lot of conversations on cybersecurity as one of the top priorities for an open, safe, and secure digital future. So happy to hear more from you and in exchange as well. Thank you. Gimel? Yeah, I
Hello.
hope I
Good to
pronounced
see
your name right. Yeah.
you did. Good to see you all again. My name is Gamal Morley. I'm in Nassau, Bahamas. I work with the Perry Institute for Marine Science. So I work with conservation of marine environments, but I also have a great passion for agriculture, especially aquaculture. So I'm here to see how we can integrate AI in both of those spaces.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you. And then
I can go
Anne?
ahead.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
My name is Dr. Brandon Bethel. I work at the University of the Bahamas in Nassau, Bahamas. I'm a physical oceanographer, and so often some of my forecasting occurs when I use a variety of AI forecasting techniques.
AI, AI for prediction, forecasting.
Yes,
All
correct. It's
right.
for usually for hurricane force waves. That's what I do it for, to replace numerical models because they're faster, a lot cheaper to use.
Awesome. Awesome. Interesting. So yeah, and anyone else left? Brandon, I think Anne, yes.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Nikita, for the invitation. I missed the first one, which I did want to attend, so I'm happy I'm able to be here this evening. I am a healthcare provider, trained healthcare provider, psychologist, and educator. I've had three iterations of a career path, but I'm now president of the Bahamas Natural Resources Foundation, a nonprofit citizen-based organization that is working towards social, environmental, and economic justice in the Bahamas. And so we are a new organization, but we are trying to see what we can do to educate the citizenry about the resources and the wealth within our country. I'm very interested in AI for so many reasons. In education, I always worked to, had a passion for the marginalized students. And so you could understand the shift now to the environment and justice. I'm interested in a lot about the ethics. How can it level the playing for these students in the classroom, or even our populace when you deal with those that might be literate? So I've been playing with GPT chat, but I'm more interested in the ethics and a lot of the conversation to see what's really going on and how we can best use it in this time and space. So I'm delighted to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anne. So a lot about equitable use, AI ethics, uh, AI governance. So we're gonna also talk a lot about that. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. So I think we're done with the round of introductions. So before heading to
Oh, wait,
Dagam's,
more.
yeah. Oh, Deborah. Perfect. Yes, we have one more. Yes, thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Deborah
Good
Thompson.
evening.
My husband and I are the founders and the owners of Paradise Air Conditioning. We come out of the HVAC industry, and basically, I am just interested in being a trendsetter for AI in this industry here in the Bahamas. And I'm just on the forum to learn. So thanks, Nikita, for the invite.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Yes, we're all here to exchange, learn. So this is excellent. So I'll just share my screen quickly. So saying before heading to before Dagam continues his presentation from last week and recap, I would like just allow me 10 minutes to kind of give you an overview, like to give you a framework of what this AI Green Lab is trying to focus on in terms of drawing this nexus between the application of AI, data governance, and also social innovation. So I'll just quickly share my screen. Can you see? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. So this is where Dagam last stopped from his presentation. So we were talking about basically about data, but before that, before diving deep into the details of data and what constitutes AI, learning, and intelligence, we're here like there's a lot of talk. I'm sure you've heard about the future of jobs and how AI is probably replacing jobs. And we see today there's statistics going around that the future of jobs will have a digital, 90% of future jobs will have a digital component. But what does that really mean for us in terms of um, will AI replace my jobs? So even if it does, why is it replacing it? Is it really, are jobs really meant to be replaced? Or were we actually doing redundant jobs that were meant to be replaced anyways? So these are some kind of the questions that we should be asking because we hear statistics like around 85 million jobs. Um, around creating we're in the future, we're expecting in 2025 about 97 million new ones being created in this AI space. There's a need for changing education curriculums. More devices are being connected to the internet. So a question on the mind. So what do we mean by AI replacing jobs, and what are we trying to replace to begin with? Why was it being replaced? So for example, like I don't know if you can differentiate these pictures, whether if it's AI generated or manual, but this was actually drawn by one of the digital art creators in here in Ethiopia named Fanuel. I'm sure that Dagan probably you might recognize his works. Uh, it's it might look AI generated, but actually he got into this. He got more visibility of his works before even AI blew up. And, there's some questions whether still really AI could perfect human creativity and those kind of questions. So this is something we can later on discuss further with Dagan when we're comparing what machine learning is capable of and what generally human intelligence is capable of. So in general, the AI global market as it stands, they say it's about worth 15.7 trillion, contributing towards the global economy by 2030. Out of that, we estimate that just to give you a comparison, this is like what just 1.8 trillion is the combined Africa's GDP as of 2019, and 1.2 trillion for the African Ocean and some other African markets, Asian markets. But these numbers seem big, and of course, there's a lot of opportunities that AI presents, but what does it really mean to be part of this knowledge economy? That's one of the key things we want to explore in this AI Green Lab. What does it mean to be part of the knowledge economy? How do we tap into these opportunities? Some of the responses from participants' application when they were applying to the AI Green Lab, some said, in response to the question, how do you imagine applying AI in your daily work? Some said they want to apply it through on ideation process, conceptualization, creating logos, writing grant proposals, whether if it's improving data analysis modeling, like Branson was saying earlier on, or it could be in product development. Some said, there's a potential for AI to be incorporated in institutions and college, for early warning systems, um, creating more accurate mood boards. I remember working in the advertising industry, how challenging it was to just do sketches and present to the clients on what kind of ad they want to see. So there's a lot of interesting responses coming from your end. Some said precision agriculture, aquamarine culture, and all of those more on-ground applications, and also in project management to report more quickly and accurately. So let me pause here for a while in case I haven't captured any responses from the audience. How do you imagine using AI, or how AI, ideally, how would you want it to solve your problems, or how you want it to speed up some of your um, work? So let me just pause here quickly, just to hear from the audience as well. I know we had this conversation last week as well, but since we have new uh, colleagues, let's hear from them as well. Yeah. Anyone who wants to contribute to this feedback?
I'll contribute.
Yes,
I'm
awesome.
exploring at this present time license plate recognition at the network edge with AI, automatically recognizing the license plate, the vehicle make and model, but at the same time, cross-analyzing that with database resources from the Insurance Association to verify that the license plate is actually supposed to be on that vehicle. Because in the Bahamas, we have a major issue in reference to persons swapping around license plates on putting them on the wrong vehicles. So that is how I'm using AI at this present time.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. So basically for license recognition, identification of licenses, if I got you right.
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Anyone else who wants to add to that? Yeah. Typically, how
Well,
you would
again,
imagine. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, sorry.
awesome.
Well, again, the improved data analysis, modeling, and prediction is definitely what I'm interested in. But beyond, let's say, basic forecasting, we can even use some AI techniques to improve what's called a parameterization within those numerical models. And so sometimes a physical process is not well understood, or it's not very well represented on a subgrid scale. And so we introduce a parameterization scheme to represent that unknown or not really understood physical process. So that's how we can use AI there, and that in turn leads to better forecasts of what's going to happen tomorrow. So you want to make sure you get your hard predictions absolutely spot on, and where we can use AI is to improve the data analysis, modeling, and prediction. That's for me.
Excellent. So, and data modeling and prediction. So it's one of the questions also we want to explore in these sessions. Dagam, you can put it on a side note. Can AI generate data, or does it just process? So it's one of those things, because I know it sounds a very basic thing, but it's good to clear out those. So yeah, so I'll move with those comments just a bit further. So there's different applications that you guys mentioned, and it's really at the core of it is data. Whether if you're going for predictions, whether if you're generating new mood boards or logo, it all depends on pre-existing data and further enhancing that and kind of a metadata, meta-analysis of already existing data. And then this is, for example, we have about, they say, according to statistics and research, by 2025, data generated by AI will account to 10% of all data produced. Now, when I see this kind of statistics, the one of the few basic questions I would like to ask is, whose data is that? Accessed by who? Um, Generated by which subject? Produced by which algorithms? Predicting what future outcome? Or applied to what commercial or human-centered development? These are all the questions we can ask when we talk about data. And depending on our different sectors and working areas, these questions might differ, but these are worth exploring. Now, one of the external shocks, as COVID, as an external shock, like I would say since 2020, since now thinking that as the most a notable period in time where we witnessed a lot of digital transition. And you might ask, why now? Why is everyone talking about AI? Why are we talking about the digital transformation? So, still, before even jumping into those conversations, I wanted to kind of step back and talk about a little about infrastructure deficits, data regulation gaps, high cost of internet data, gender divides. Like someone was also mentioning the biases and the ethical conditions that you need to consider in these conversations, and also the digital skills gap. Just to quickly go through, what do we mean by the barriers? Internet penetration, for example, like just to give you a context from the African perspective, we're still having this conversation about AI in an Africa which still has 40% internet penetration. Of course, there's some improvements from 2005, where we only had 2.6 coverage, but not compared to 39% in Europe at the same year. But still, internet access is still an issue. Affordability issue is an issue. Cost of data is still 3 times the global average for just 1 GB of data. We're talking about also the actual device cost for having even a mobile device, which is a first entry point to having meaningful connectivity. We're talking about also gender digital divide. And all of these are layers, pre-existing layers, which makes it even which is central to data conversations. So even before even all of this data, mobile device, and all of these barriers, we can even talk about electricity. Access to electricity is still an issue in most parts of the global south. We're still at about 44% right now coverage in Africa. And you can see that also contributes to having some meaningful contribution and involvement in the conversation with data, and as being well represented in these spaces. So I'll just pause here, and maybe Dagam, I would like to hear a little bit from your side. There was, for example, when we talk about these kind of statistics, and then when we mean access, having meaningful access to having meaningful connectivity, what are the first things that come to your mind? And you can maybe touch on those points, but also you can continue with your presentation from last time. This is just to kind of draw a bigger framework for thinking of how we understand data, where are the gaps, and what do we mean by meaningful connectivity. So I'll just pause here and then hear from you as well. Back to you.
Thank you, Avi. Like that's actually like a very a very interesting point to start from. Because like setting context is usually important. I know, like we kind of last week we directly dived into the whole what is AI, what is learning, and how do machines learn, how do people learn. Like kind of like started from the bottom up approach in a way, but like what you kind of did is like coming from this top down approach so that we can actually kind of meet up in between, and understanding the context is very much crucial. And also like one thing I would really want to mention is whenever we talk about AI, this keeps coming back, like especially like in our vicinity, whenever we're having a conversation, everyone is talking about, oh, we still are not self-sufficient when it comes to like feeding ourselves as a continent and also like as a nation. And you're here like talking about AI, like such kind of conversation would come, and like I believe like the questions are very valid, where most like some there will be a significant amount of people that would think, we should not focus on AI, but we should actually focus on providing for our people, providing food for our people, for providing peace for our people. And these two conversations, like I would want to kind of like start by reflecting on it. We always like whenever we talk about the human civilization, we've come a long way compared to our ancestors, like let's say 10,000 years ago, or like 12,000 years ago. And actually, like as a society, we have evolved as humanity. We have evolved much further in the past, let's say 100 years compared to the previous 10,000 years. We have seen like the longest agrarian kind of civilization. Then from the agrarian civilization, where Africa kind of played a significant part, we kind of jumped into this whole industrial revolution. And I think that's where we became a backseater, you know, kind of like we kind of dived into this long, like centuries old darkness where there was no progress in a way. And then like we skipped that whole industrial revolution, and by the moment we're awake, the rest of the world has already advanced so much that we can't keep that. And in your last presentation, in the last slide, there was this term that's usually is mentioned, which is called leapfrogging. And we are latecomers, like to the whole initiative. Like for example, if you come to Africa, when it comes to the whole technological infrastructure, not like you are talking about how we don't have access to it, right? Like how we don't have access to electricity, how we don't have access to internet. But like by far the most scariest thing is we don't even have the capacity to build it. Like so now we're only talking about having access, but if you look deeper, we don't have the knowledge and the know-how to even create it. Like we're not building our computers here. Like we don't have like our mainframes here. Like we're not producing chips here. We're not producing these devices here. Like we're actually still a consumer community, and we're lagging even from a consumption perspective. Forget the creation part. And this is yes, it's going to be like a struggle, but if you look at the world history, there is a lot to be inspired by. Like for example, like let's look at China in the past 40 years. And we've seen how a nation can completely, that was backward, completely lagging in all endeavors, like by mobilizing the community, by bringing together like the government, the people, the private sector, by coming together. And now we have China as one of the leading like in the top 3 or 2 like levels of like the world technology advancement. So that's what we call leapfrogging. Yes, we might be lagging, but if we don't start the conversation today, and if we don't start like having our youngsters come and join these endeavors today, then after 30 years we're still going to have the same conversation. So I'm very optimistic when it comes to such kind of dialogues. Like we've seen the negative sides of like the whole data, but like also like you said, every data has two sides. There's also like a positive, like for example, we're not seeing the population and how like how most of the youth population of the future is going to be from Africa, whether we like it or not. Um, how we still, as a society, we still kept our kind of we're still living in a collective, like communal kind of lifestyle, which is somehow being degraded and being like kind of forgotten when we look at the West. So these are like there are also like as we're lagging in some fields, there are areas that we're actually like um, very much advanced. For example, when it comes to our relationship with nature, I think that's the same with uh, yeah, like for example, like we are still intertwined and very much connected with our ancestry and nature and like relationship. That's something that's kind of kept. And looking at the future, I think the two worlds of like hyper individualistic but yet advanced civilization, there will be kind of a merger between this very nature centric holistic kind of society and philosophy. They can come together and create a better future, like so that's actually what I envision. So continuing from that, like I think Abby, you want to add something on that as well.
No, that was brilliant. Yeah, I'm also taking note of Nikita's comment of how we have to take note of the Caribbean as the sixth region of the
Yeah,
African
exactly.
continent, and
Yeah.
that's the power of where AI comes in.
Yeah.
Like this kind of transboundary learning, and like thinking beyond just boundaries, our physical boundaries. And that's where really this conversation becomes powerful. And you're right, the leapfrogging effect is really what we don't want to just talk about the barriers, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we are still at a very consumer level. We're not producing more. We're still, heavy consumers of just content, basically, as opposed to even reaching that creator level. But that's where actually this where I stopped at the just let me share that again. So it was actually a survey they were asking around, and it was basically a think tank group that made the survey. So a lot of people actually when they were asked what does it mean to build back better, in a post-COVID
Yeah.
world, and they were it's surprisingly leapfrogging to the digital economy stood out as
Mm.
opposed to just the other factors, whether if it's expanding infrastructure, achieving regional integration, which are all of these are like good products of connectivity and how we use the technology. But the leapfrogging of the digital technology is really what we want to focus on this session. Technology as an equalizer. So that's just a key point I wanted to emphasize on this. So thank you for sharing that. So yeah, before going to data as a public common good, I'll just pause here. And then let me also hear from the audience who, if you have any questions, and then we can go to Dagam's presentation. Any questions, thoughts? Feel
Yeah,
free to chip in.
I'll
Yeah,
just,
Nikita.
I mean, so this is, it's very interesting being in this space because I really don't, I really don't know much about AI. So there are aspects of what, people are saying, like even, Donovan, your comments about how you're applying AI as it relates to like the driver's light plates,
That's
like stolen cars or the wrong cars is just so, it makes so much sense, but it's just so fascinating. Like I wouldn't have thought about that but hearing you say that, I'm just like, I immediately was like, oh yeah, there's such a need for that in the Bahamas. So I think that's really it's interesting hearing how some people already are applying AI in their work, but then knowing there's so many sides to it, like listening to Antonice talk about just even like when you're on social media, and it's true, like so many of my ads now are saying, if you're not using AI support in this, or like for video editing, AI, so it's just interesting how it's present, in probably so many more places than we're even cognizant of. So, and also I want to presence that there's a lot that I'm not exactly understanding in this conversation, and that's okay. And so if anyone isn't exactly following parts of this conversation, please feel free to just pause, raise your hand, drop some things in the chat box, because this is definitely a brave space. I want to say I learned that term during this regional conference of youth, as opposed to like a safe space. Sort of brave spaces are create more space for equity and for learning and for sort of co-creation and respectful dialogue. Understanding that it takes courage for us to meaningfully and equitably engage with each other and reciprocally. So this is a brave space. And so please also, if you have questions, ask your questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Nikita. Yeah, Dagam, were you trying to speak? Or
So maybe like
yeah.
just to add up, I think it's someone else. Okay. So when you were like we were talking about like leapfrogging, and like actually we're seeing signs that there are actually pretty much obvious signs. For example, like now when you look at the African and the African continent, like I'm considering the Caribbean as well, as one, because I remember like when during my stay at the University of Texas for the fellowship, one of the things that was actually like an awakening moment was how much of like our descendants and our brothers and sisters are living across like the world, all over, like spread around the world, and how Africa's progress is not only for Africa but like for everyone who's actually out of from Africa. So I remember like my professor saying Africa needs to develop, or like needs to leapfrog, not because or only like not only for the African sake, but for everyone who's black and like living around the world. So and he kept narrating like how societies are like earn respect, and like I know like it's not a fair world, but at the end of the day, if you come, we have to do the job. Like we have to do the work, and we're seeing some of the works happening. For example, like now we know Africa is a mobile continent. Like we kind of adapted smartphones and like started using them for payment services faster, quicker, and better than the West. Like we never did, like for example, internet banking. Let's say it's still a new phenomena for Africans, but mobile banking now it's happening everywhere in Africa. But like it was actually like first adapted in Africa, then kind of went back to the rest of the world. So yes, we are seeing this kind of leapfrogging, not only like leapfrogging, but like jumping into whatever new like the latest technology trend is, and like kind of adapting it in our context and contributing back to the world. So this is not just something we're trying to say for dialogue's sake, but like we have actual evidence that's true. There is this advancement. There is actually uh, technological adaptations that we're seeing, and like if you look at how like how fast of a pace now, like even like taking Ethiopia for example, how fast of a pace that we are having. Like we just adapted 5G, imagine, like, and compared to Europe, like we only got 4G like 2 or 3 years ago. So like that's actually what we mean by leapfrogging in action. Like we're seeing it, and it's I believe like I'm very optimistic about meeting the rest of the world in the near future, like in the same place.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. So at the core of this leapfrogging is data, and I really want to talk about that and hear from everyone in this room. So what do we mean by, so really at the global stage right now, as you guys know, like data has been mostly produced by big tech companies, and how we respond and engage with these companies, whether if it's Facebook, and all of these social media platforms, which have a lot of which base their products on their own consumers, meaning that's us being the products, and of course using those data for to predict and also have further deeper insights, whether if it's commercial insights or marketing insights. But now I would like to ask, what um, now imagine having that prediction, that accuracy of, how Facebook suggests your friends, or maybe how LinkedIn suggests your next connections, or maybe how TikTok suggests your the most likely video that you might watch. Imagine having those accurate predictions into your own workspace, like into your own work application. So ideally, in that idealistic mindset, what would be the most valuable data in your work field? I know Brandon mentioned something related to the natural prediction in the natural world, the physical world, and talked about a little bit about biases. What kind of data could be biased in your line of work, and how could it be improved? Anthony, same thing. So I want to hear more. What type of data would is powerful in your line of work? Um, Maybe just to give a prompt, for example, Nikita, I know you work in the ocean space and the marine space. You measure hydrometric data, for example. Anthony's also in the Royal Ring Catchers Network. I know you guys are big into that space, like measuring hydrometric data. Now, in an ideal world, what do you want? How would you want your data to be perfected? um, if you had the power to take that data from big tech companies, like that's where we're trying to head in this co-creation lab. How do we make data work for development? How do we talk about data for development? Where do we even start a conversation? I know I asked a lot of questions, but it's just this is where we kind of want to start the co-creation, right? So I'll leave the floor to everyone to respond to that.
Okay, I'd like to say something.
Yeah,
As it
sure. Go
pertains
ahead.
to data, what I see of the future of data is there's value in machine to machine or person to person data. Right now, I think we are too heavily dependent on the internet for communicating even locally. And so I think that one-to-one relationship has a value, and I think we need to build on that, considering if we learned anything from COVID-19, when there's disruption in communication, it seems as though even though countries make significant investments to modernize their infrastructure, all of their infrastructure is internet based. So really, without internet, then your investment has no value.
Mm. Okay, so the power of connectivity, right? And one-to-one connection. So what do you mean by one-to-one connection, Donovan? I'm kind of curious and interested on that. What
Yeah,
what do you mean by one-to-one connection?
I look at the internet as a decentralized, for it to be
Mm.
decentralized, adds more value to it. And when I saw that, for example, ATMs or credit card machines need to be connected over the internet to connect to a local bank. And
Mm,
so what I'm looking at is when I say decentralized is that credit card machine needs to be directly connected to that bank rather than over the internet. Because over the internet, if there's a major disruption, then what use is a credit card? And what use is digital
mm,
currency? Because even digital currency, because you make it so much about in the internet, without the internet, it has no value.
mhm. So the power of decentralization. Okay, when we talk
Exactly.
about connectivity, right? Okay, I've taken note of that. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
Anthony's, I'm curious about your reflections.
Sorry, what's my name called?
Oh,
Um, my reflection on the data, collecting data, I believe that it has the potential to be very powerful. Um, so I'll just take, for instance, example, me as a part of the Royal Rain Catchers. I'm collecting precipitation, just collecting rainfall, and just yeah, collecting the rainfall and determine how much rain is fall throughout the day. If rain is not being fall when we're having drought and stuff like that. And I am now using a new app, what is called EpiCollect, which I think is very awesome because it allows me to pinpoint my location. It also allow me to take a picture of the rain gauge, as well as me typing in how much rainfall, because human error can be sometimes is very big. So it helps me where I could take the picture and also add in my data. So I think AI is very powerful in that sense. And also in like with different apps and everything, the only thing I have with AI is that I don't want it to take over so much where that we as individuals don't think as much. Because take for example, I'm typing out something on my phone and it's like the computer know exactly what I want to type. Like they write out the whole question. I'm like, okay, that's what I wanted to say. And I just put that in. So I mean it's powerful, but yet like we need to find that balance with the AI because I feel like from last year to now, I don't know, it's like fire under the AI and it's like, it's going super, super fast. And also like Abby, and Danma, did I pronounce your name right? How you were saying that in Africa, a lot of people don't have access to the Wi-Fi and the internet and stuff like that. With AI going so fast and the internet going so fast, I think it's still like a big gap. Some people even haven't made it to having a phone or internet. So it's going to be very difficult and hard for them to catch up with this AI moving so fast.
Hmm. Interesting reflections, Anthony's. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, so we're in this intersection, right? We're in this crossroad where we either could leapfrog or either double down on our existing gaps, which I've been trying to share with you earlier on, whether if it's access to electricity, data, cost, affordability, the gender divide, the AI algorithm biases, all of those pre-existing layers, which already we've been grappling with. But the power now comes where when we talk about um, when we talk about data for development, right now, imagine the SDGs, right? Like we're halfway through the SDGs. We're trying to meet these global goals, 17 of them, right? For 7 billion people. And right now, the world is halfway through it, trying to take a pause and reflect uh, how well we've been doing on the SDGs, right? And guess what? The problem is there's no data, particularly in areas where, like the Caribbean, and the global South, Africa, we share very common and similar challenges. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned from the Bahamas and which in the Caribbean region in general is that although you might have the illusion that you guys are like a very high GDP earning countries and very well developed countries, under it, there's still underlying very um, untalked about or maybe usually unanalyzed deep challenges where data is one of the gaps. And this is where we share common challenges and we're trying to provide common solutions on how we can think and imagine where we can be the owners of our own data. Whether if you're like in Donover in the in the security or decentralization space, or whether there's still a lot that I'm learning in the different applications of AI and how they translate in your respective life. But at the core of it is how do we make data speak for our own lived realities? How do we make it speak for our own, um, for because you say that it's really about to provide good predictions. You need to have good foundational context, foundational data. So, and interestingly, when they're trying to calculate these SDGs, how far they've come and how far they've gone. For example, how do you even measure uh, gender equity? For example, how gender involvement in different activities, or like when it comes to um there's some very difficult targets and SDGs that are difficult to measure, let alone already there's some good data on ecosystem related information, but still lacking on human and social aspects of the SDGs. So I would like to hear more. What data reflects your reality? Let's start with that. I know I said talked a lot, so let me also share with yeah, let me hear from you guys as well. What data
I like
speaks your reality?
data as it pertains to me. It's data. It depends on who you're giving the information to. For example, the police. Normally, it seems as though persons are giving the police wrong information. However, they are giving the insurance company the right information. And it seems as though they are trusting more of the private sector rather than the public sector. Um, so it's really it's a disconnection, but at the same time, you know, we trying to cross analyze the police data with the insurance association data, but there's a disconnect in reference to they don't want to share their data, and the police definitely don't want to share their data. And so, it's a major challenge trying to get persons on the same to work and collaborate and to streamline a process that would benefit both entities, but also the nation in itself. So, like I said, it's a balancing act, and it's something like when I mentioned even to the insurance association, they said they've been trying to do this for the last 25 years. So, technology isn't the problem. It's who the client trusts and who they trust and what information, the public sector is prepared to share and what information they're prepared to share. So it's a battle between those two entities in my field.
So issue of trust. Okay, very, very, very important. Thank you for sharing that. Who do we trust? It's not the lack of the technology or how or what they're able to do, but how do you build that trust environment to share data openly? So it's interesting you said we actually trust the private companies more than our governments. And it's all, I work in a space where we're trying to support member states, African member states, 54 of them, to fast track their digital transformation strategy at the Economic Commission for Africa. And one of the challenges is getting the parliamentarians on board, you see, getting them involved to pass on legislations that actually builds trust. There's no lack of techie, techie guys who get the technology right and running effectively. It's actually who you trust and how you build that trust. Data being at the core of it. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Anybody else? Gimel, I know we haven't heard much from you. Deborah, if you have any questions, please feel free to step up, to take a bit back. If there's any terms we're not clear on, we'd be happy to take a step back. But yeah, so what data speaks your reality? What data
Well,
speaks your reality? Yeah.
when it comes to writing scientific papers and having to submit them to scientific journals, you have to format it differently, depending on which scientific journal it is. And for some people, that's a little bit difficult because they're not sure on what they need in order for it to be formatted correctly. So just having an AI system where it can scan, well, possibly scan your raw document and then format it based on which publication you want to send it to would be extremely helpful to a lot of students. Like it would break down some barriers for people.
Mm-hmm. So language, right? So yeah. Nikita, you wanted to speak
Such
on
an
that? Or
interesting
yeah.
perspective, because, and I guess it kind of goes to the core of what is the end goal, or what is the data communicating, right? Because if really, because the academic in me was just kind of like, what? Like, we just spent our lives learning how to format and write papers, and now all of a sudden AI is going to do it. But and I also realized that, like, what's the point of the whole paper? The point of the paper is to communicate the knowledge, and so if you can communicate that knowledge in a more efficient and timely and clear and concise way, that's interesting. So interesting reflections, Gimel. Thank you.
Maybe like to kind of have a say here, like I think when you started, Avi, you kind of showed us an image, and like we were talking about like how, let's say, a painting that was made with an AI, would that be like replacing human creativity? Now, there is like actually a huge debate that's going on. I don't know if you remember, but like last year there was this AI generated painting who actually was submitted and won a competition. But at the end of the, like, after winning the competition, the people who kind of submitted it revealed that that painting was made by AI and not by a human being, and it created a huge backlash on the whole creative industry. But like, for example, if you have this conversation, one of the biggest questions is like, what does that mean? Like when a human creates, it's more than just a painting, right? Like it's just there is like I think like Nikita, you were actually mentioning this like earlier on. Why do human, like, we create for a reason? There's a deeper why. We're not just aggregating. Like whenever we talk about art, it's not beauty. We're not actually about talking about beauty. It's the whole process. Like you can look at a Picasso painting, and you're not like only talking about the techniques of the painting. It's actually the whole process from a deep why to an actual realization of it. Now, whenever we talk about AI, what an actual AI would do is kind of go through a bunch of data, find a pattern in that data, and generally finally like do a prediction and gives you whatever results like that was asked for. So now whenever we're talking about like AI replacing our jobs, still now at the end of the day, we're not seeing an AI coming with a why. Like and that's like we call it like a singularity. Like a singularity is when the day comes where like artificial intelligence would ask, why do I exist? Or like Martians the day Martians start to ask why they exist, that would be like the singularity happening. But like we don't expect that to happen anytime soon. Like or like we're not seeing any signs of that happening anytime soon. So yes, they would make Martians would come and optimize our day-to-day lives. Yes, our like by far, for example, we're talking about sustainability and like we have been collecting data for almost centuries, and all of this data is like it's very hard for a human being to sit down and go through it. It was so much that it was generational. Like our ancestors kind of did some of the data, like, analyzed it, they captured it in a formal like structural way. They passed it on us through an educational system, and like that's how we actually that humanity passed on the knowledge. But now, thanks to AI, we can actually give the AI all the information we've had from including from our great grandparents, and the AI can sift through it and like gives us a better prediction of how our future would look like. And yes, that's what we're always looking for: performance optimization, like making life easier and giving us insight that we were not able to see in a way. So yes, data is very critical. There is all over the place thanks to like now social media. Everyone is being kind of surveilled in a way. Like every interaction, every click, every like, every pause, but rewind, fast forward is actually being kind of archived by like these big companies, and that data would exist now. But like the whole like whenever we talk about sustainability, the way the world model is set up for now, which is like a very high profit centric kind of model. This data is somehow hidden from us. Like Facebook knows you better than you know yourself, but it's not availing that data for you so that you can become a better person. But I think that's where the future is leading. We're always like looking at data democratization, AI. Now we're using AI. In the past, AI used to be used against us, but now with ChatGPT and Midjourney, now we're actually using it on a daily to day basis, and that's the beauty of technology, where eventually technology would reach to the people, and like they start to leverage it, and we start to use it. So I think it's just a matter of time before the model would change and we'd have access to all the data that we've been feeding the machine, and eventually we'll see it. And that's like the best mirror that we'll ever find. And that would show us all the blind spots that we missed in the past. So I think data is like, yes, at the heart of everything anyway.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think that's that's a beautiful expose. I think we're running out of time, yeah, Nikita. We need to wrap up. So just to kind of there's a slide that kind of summarized what kind of aligned with what Dagim just shared with me, and I'll just pause on that. And it kind of says. So when we're talking about data as a public common good, so as you said, you know, you have these big tech companies access your data, like consume, amass your data, but at the same time, we're having a push. Like as I told you, halfway through the SDGs, we're trying to understand data, right? We are seeing the data gaps. And now there's all of a sudden there's a push that data should be a public common good. And now I like this quote on how someone was explaining about how inherently there should have been less, if not zero, rivalry in the consumption of data for human development, as data can be indefinitely be used. Sorry, I missed out a word on that. it can be used indefinitely without necessarily impacting the ability of another person or entity for that matter to use the same data as a public good. So it's just to say it's really how you use a certain set of data. Two different entities can use it in two different ways. So it's just there's indefinite amount of ways you can use a certain amount of data. But the challenge as it has always been is the challenge between public using public common good and commercialization. It's always a battle between those who want to make money and those who want to progress human development. So this is the conversation I feel like we're kind of shaping slowly. And in order to actually take those data and actually use it for yourself, you need trust, right? How do we build that trust? So I would start by taking two words from today's session before we close. How do we build trust? And what data speaks for your reality? This is my takeaway. And I would like to hear from you as well before. I know we're short on time. We're left with 8 minutes, but it's more than enough to hear also a few words we can write down as our word cloud or for our next session. You know, seeing Nikita, you nodding your head, maybe
Yeah,
what
I like
resonated.
I like those questions. How do we build trust and what data speaks for your reality? Whew. This was like I just feel like I dove into a new world these past hour and a half. So it was just an interesting space to be sort of listening to the conversation. Um, I'm interested in data from a how does it tell our story and like the true story, because I think so many of our stories have been told for us, but not by us. And I think data helps us tell a more powerful story that's grounded in our reality, and especially as our reality is threatened by so many hazards associated with like climate crisis, all the things. I'm curious as to how data can help to improve equity in accessing resources for the greater good. And so that's sort of like my interest in data, because I think it's a powerful storyteller, but you have to have that data in order to tell the story. And I think this is where the gaps are. So that kind of like goes back to like, the community scientist project Antonise was talking about, and how, like people in that program, the Royal Rain Catchers, are helping to collect data that's going to tell a story about precipitation and rainfall. So yeah, I'm curious about how I can use AI better to support me, but I'm also just in the back of the classroom listening right now.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn and understand. There's still there couldn't be one set of expertise in this subject. It's because the application is very broad and vast, but we can definitely start to define where we, how do we break these barriers into telling that story you've been mentioning, right? What are the first-hand barriers? Even from talking about device, it could be even about devices, even if it's what's our relationship with numbers, or like simple things we can start talking about when it comes to data for our own storytelling. Dagam, any Anne,
Yeah, I
Deborah?
think
Yeah.
maybe I don't know to mention like a couple of points, like because you were talking about trust. So and like we can actually look at trust and sustainability like hand in hand. And I think just to give you an perspective, for example, how data was being used. For example, let's take Google for example. So, like even like whenever we look at the information age, it had two stages. Like so now we're actually in the wisdom era, and like we're talking about like a different understanding. So back in the days when first like data become like oh everyone figured out that it's all about information and data, and whoever has the data win the game, like the economical game. So Google started hoarding information, like so they would collect it through their search engine and all those their platforms, the YouTube, Google, like, and they used to kind of hoard it, and they used to sell it for the highest bidder, especially when it comes to geospatial data, like this GIS data. And this has been happening like for the first decade of the information age. And uh, one thing that was happening was as the amount of data they started collecting massed up, what was happening is like to maintain it, meaning for the servers like that was holding they were actually investing, spending more money to maintain that data and to keep it compared to like how much they are selling it off. So like they were like actually having very small transaction that was happening. So now Google had to kind of completely change their business model, and they said, "Oh, no, this is not helping. Hoarding data doesn't help." So now, for example, like if you look at your Google Maps, you can use Google Maps anywhere. So what they did is, so they said anyone can use the data, and anyone can take that data. If you use that data, and if you make something out of it, then Google would share the profit. You would share the profit with Google. Now, this model is more sustainable in a way. So now, like this has like we're seeing this happening, but like it's not happening when, for example, when it comes to our data, like our stories data. Like now, when social media hasn't reached this stage yet. But imagine if I have access to all the data, like all of my data online as an individual, or also like as a community as well as Africans. If we can have our data in the insights they have actually analyzed based on our data, then that would give us a very interesting insight to make up for us to plan further. Like so, it's kind of we can create a business model where they give us our data, we see it, we kind of based on our data dream of a better version of ourselves, and we act we act that way, and then like there will be a continuous flow of the data helping us and we helping them with the data. And like I think this would be a very sustainable model, but it's going to be like any sustainable models, it's not going to be quick cash or quick revenue model. So yes, it's like the world has to change whenever we're talking about sustainability. The world has to change when it comes to understanding profits, because profit would make no sense if we don't have like a place to live in, let's say, like, or if everyone losing and only you are winning. So at the end of the day, it boils like the whole trust issue and data issue would boil down to having the bigger picture and um, thinking long term in a way. I think that's where it's going to eventually converge, you know.
Fascinating. I think that's a good stop to our discussion, a nice wrap up. A lot to think about. And there's a lot I was taking notes from your words, Dagam, and yeah, so I think we are right on time. And with this note, maybe on the next session, so just to give you a highlight, we'll be talking more about some of the emerging frontiers of data for development, on how we can talk about like what are, for example, in the instant payment systems in African context, maybe you can share you what's up and coming, what's exciting, and we would also love to hear from the Caribbean point of view, like what kind of exciting progresses or things that give you more optimism about a better future in terms of how data can leverage our for a better planet, for people and for peace in general. So this is with that note, I would put it to a pause here. Nikita, if you have any closing remarks, we can stop there. If there's any question, feel free to ask. But that's it from my end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abby, and thank you so much, everyone who has tuned in to today's session in our AI Green Lab series. This really has been an interesting dive for me, just sort of getting me to think about AI and data and its applications in ways that I haven't exactly thought about before. And so this is what this is all about. I'm really excited to see next week's conversation. And I've also been thinking about how we can disseminate this conversation, simplify it so that it is more accessible to wider audiences who are just sort of stepping into understanding AI. I think this is part of the barriers, is that because like it is just such a, it's like a steep slope. There's no, it's not gradual. You're just like, you're in and then you just dive down. And so I definitely was reflecting on today's session on like, what do we need to do to bring more people into this conversation and to sort of, support our collective understanding. So thank you so much. This recording will be available. So the replay, for those who are watching the replay, we're so happy that you are enjoying the learning with us. And we look forward to seeing everyone next week back here in Zoomland as we continue our AI Green Lab webinar series. All righty. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Have a good
Good
evening.
night, everybody. Thank you.
Night,
Good
night.
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 Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.
Good night. Hello.
Oh, stop the recording. Stop the recording.
We are better on timing
Great,
than
but
last
stop the
time.
recording, Abby.
Hmm?
Stop the recording.
Oh, okay.